I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro 6 months after almost dying from a cardiac arrest. 6 months after I survived a cardiac arrest. And to think about that, to actually say that out loud is pretty nuts. What's even crazier was that on my 25th birthday, I landed in Tanzania. And then 3 days later, which was the 6 month anniversary of me waking up in the hospital after surviving cardiac arrest, that was when we started the climb. So just crazy, crazy alignment there. And then, you know, when my friend Pat reached out to me about climbing Kilimanjaro, I was sitting in the hospital, not sitting in the hospital, I was laying in the hospital bed 3 days after the incident had happened. And I just had this overwhelming calling for me to reach out to Pat and tell him, "Hey, this is what just happened. I was trying to run a 5 minute mile and it quite literally killed me. Um, by the grace of God, I'm still alive." And I just felt this calling to go to Tanzania to help out, to volunteer with his organization down there, Selfless Solutions, which is providing education to underprivileged children. The education system there is just so broken. So I really wanted to go and help in any way that I could and just experience what it was like living in a third world country, in a developing country. And he comes back to me the next day and was like, one, what the hell? Glad you're alive, but okay, amazing. How about we organize Climb for the Kids, which he has had in his mind for, a year or two at this point. And kind of the idea for Climb for Kids was bring everybody together, climb Kilimanjaro, and then a lot of the proceeds will go to sponsoring children so that they can get a better education. And I'm sitting there 3 days after almost dying, and I'm like, yes, I will do it. I'm going to commit to climbing Kilimanjaro in 6 months. And so I didn't know what happened, what caused the incident. Still don't, honestly. And didn't know what the future was going to hold or what, my health was going to look like moving forward. But all I knew was that if I had this calling that God was going to, he was the one who put that on my heart. And, if he was going to lead me to it, he was going to lead me through it. So I had full trust that I was going to be okay in the coming months and I was going to be able to do it. So, once I got cleared from the hospital, had my defibrillator put in and, went through the recovery process, started, looking forward towards Kilimanjaro. And I wanted to take this episode to just really debrief and take you through that whole journey of what it was like to reach Africa's highest peak and go scale the tallest freestanding mountain in the world. So, one, for people who are asking, yes, it was a pretty expensive trip. I'm gonna do another video at some point talking about what it actually costs to climb Kilimanjaro. But I mean, it's not cheap, but it is for many a once in a lifetime experience. And I always say to people, you're gonna learn more through experiences like this than you are from any book, any podcast, any YouTube video, any mastermind, any course that you take. Like, you're going to learn more by just putting yourself in the arena and actually doing the thing than you are from any of that stuff. Because 7 days, I wasn't posting any content, obviously, because I didn't have any internet, but I was documenting the whole process, but just being completely unplugged from the world and just being in nature in this overwhelming beauty in God's creation was something I can't even begin to articulate into words. It was something that I've never experienced before. And on the first day, we were running about two, 2.5 hours behind. And by the time we started day one of the climb. It was after 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and we were going 11 kilometers, and we were gaining about 4,500 feet of elevation. So, pretty a pretty good test on the first day. We were taking the Machami route, which was a 7-day course. It's the most popular route. It's, moderate difficulty and, just overall really good experience. So we were taking the Machami route, and there was nobody else out there on the trail with us because everybody had started earlier so that they could get to camp and set up and unwind and eat and everything for the next day. We had started a little bit later, and day one, you're actually in a jungle climate. So it's pretty hot. It's pretty muggy. It's like in the jungle, rainforest climate. You're going through the trees. You can hear the monkeys swinging through the tree. We didn't see any, or we saw a couple monkeys on the first day, but for the most part, it was pretty steep, a pretty steep uphill climb. And just getting acclimated to that elevation, it was a little tough. And for some people in our group, it was really probably the toughest day overall for them. My toughest days came on days 3 and 4, and I'll definitely get into that. But day one, it was kind of a race against time because we knew that the sun was setting, and as much as we wanted to stop and take our time and enjoy some of the views that we were getting, we really had to hustle to get there. So our guide kept being like, "Hey, come on, like we got to go." And honestly, it's created a little bit of friction in our group because, for my mom, for example, I know you're listening, Mom. I love you. Um, but I was like, "Yo, we got to go." And I was kind of picking up the pace a little bit. She started yelling at me because I was going too fast, but I was never in front of the guide. So trying to justify myself here. But day one, we it took about 4 hours and 45 minutes to get from the start of the Machame route to our first base camp. And by 7:30, it was getting dark, and we still had like another hour to go, and we only had 2 headlamps. Only 2 of us had brought headlamps, me not being one of them. So we had to survive off of that. So that's one tip for anybody going on any climbs is always have batteries with you, always have your headlamp on you no matter what time of day, and then always have plenty of water and, a couple snacks in there. So we did finally make it to camp. It was pitch black, but we saw the most unbelievable sky that you will ever see in your entire life. Just looking up and seeing the friggin' millions of stars that looked so close and so bright. It was unlike anything I'd ever seen before. I was out in Utah in Zion last year, and that was the craziest sky that I had ever seen. But this completely blew it out of the water. Like, it was just magnificent, and something again that, like, a picture I can't even capture with a picture. I can't justify with words, but it was like one of the closest I've ever felt to God because I could just look up and just feel how small I was in this world. So we get to camp, and we our tents are already set up from our porters. They're carrying our duffel bags, they're carrying our sleeping bags, they're carrying our tents. They're carrying like 40 pounds on their head and on their neck every day. It's freaking nuts from camp to camp. And so everything's already set up there. We get there to camp, and they give us water to wash up with, and obviously we're not taking showers or anything like that. Gonna get changed out of our clothes that we just sweat in, and it gets cold. It gets really cold at night, so put on some of our cold weather gear, and then we all had dinner together, which was one of my favorite things about the trip was just being able to share meals together. And you're not roughing it on this trip. I mean, like, it's tough. Don't get me wrong. You have to be in it, and you have to be fit, and you have to be in shape to do it. But You're not having to lug around your own sleeping bag, your own tent and pitch it and things like that. You're not having to rely on your own meals. That's included in the cost. Is you get a freaking world class chef who's making these amazing meals on the mountain. So you're not going to starve if if that was something you're wondering about. Some of the meals that we would have chicken, we would have potatoes, we'd have pancakes, we'd have eggs, we'd have soup at every meal. We had some incredible stuff. So day one was just getting ourselves acclimated, just realizing, okay, like here's how we're gonna brush our teeth, here's how we're gonna here's how meals are gonna work, here's what it's like, and then kind of getting a debrief of the day and what we were gonna do the next day and what the schedule was from our guides, who by the way are just incredible, incredible people. Like I have never been so overwhelmed by like just so much love and abundance than by these guys. They're the most kind-hearted, genuine, caring people that I've ever met. And so we had 5 guides and they were just incredible people. And I cried when I had to say goodbye to them, which I'll get to later on. But that was day 1. We we made it despite all of the trials that we had to face for that day. And day 2 was better. We woke up and had breakfast and we took off, and it was a lot of elevation again, but it wasn't as far of a climb. But we were going through, a different climate. We were up in the clouds. So it was a little colder. It looked like it was gonna rain all day, but it didn't. It was just a little wet, but overall not too bad. It's just a lot of long, slow climbing. So as much as you want to just like get up there and rip it and go hard, like the guides, they always say pole pole, which means slow, slow. And that's just because you're getting up to really, really high elevation. So we were going up to about 10,000 feet of elevation that day. So you don't want to go too hard and risk getting altitude sickness or having any other issues once you get to that height, once you get to that altitude. So we hiked for about 5.5 hours on this day. Day 2 was about 5.5 hours. And along the way, we're taking snack breaks every, hour, hour and a half or so. And, sitting down for a couple of minutes, but not too long because you don't want to get stiff or anything like that. So our guides do a really good job of kind of just pacing the whole trip. So we climbed for about 5.5 hours that day. And then, climbing in the evening the night before and then waking up and climbing right again. That was tough for a lot of us. And, by the afternoon on day 2, I just needed to take a rest. So I went up, climbed, found a spot on the mountain with some grass and laid down and took a little nap. It actually rained a little bit, but actually felt pretty good. And then later in the afternoon there, we did what's called an acclimation climb. So we went up, we camped at about 10,000 feet, and then we did an acclimation climb just to get a little bit more elevation. So, like somewhere between 500 and 1,000 feet, and then climbed back down. And we saw just some unbelievable views at Sheer Cave, which was the camp that we were at for that night. And again, just looking out and seeing the sunset there at Sheer Cave was just breathtaking. Like there's no other word to describe it other than just breathtaking. So once we got back down from the acclimation climb was one of my favorite parts of the entire trip. The guides and the porters, Tanzania is a very proud culture. They are very proud of, you know, who they are. They're very proud of, Kilimanjaro. It's a big part of their economy there. And they have these songs that everybody in Tanzania knows. And so they started singing these songs, and it was just so heartwarming and such you know, the vibe that we needed because a lot of us were really, really tired. And there's a little bit of tension. We were all still getting to know each other, and we had a very diverse group of we had people as young as 23 and as old as 62, and just this whole experience of just singing and dancing really brought everybody together and lifted up the vibe. So after that, we had dinner, we went to sleep, and we woke up again for day 3. Day 3 was our first double day. So we camped at Shira Cave, which was about 12,500 feet of elevation, and then from there, we were going up to over 15,000 feet of elevation. We were going to Lava Tower Camp. So that was about a 5.5 hour climb of a lot of elevation gain over that. And we were going through like desert climate. It was very dry. It was very gray. There was no sun. And, after a while of, making small talk, you kind of just are walking in silence. There's not much to talk about. Everybody's kind of in that mental pain cave, in that physical pain cave. And, as you get up into those higher elevations, it becomes a lot harder to breathe. So for us, a lot of that time was just spent just getting there. We're like, we just got to get to lunch. And so we broke for lunch at Lava Tower Camp. And when you're at that height, when you're at that altitude, it becomes really hard to eat and your digestion slows. So they were giving us more easy to digest foods like, bananas, potatoes, fruit, things like that. And for me, I started to have some stomach issues on day 3, which is not completely uncommon, but still sucks nonetheless. So I wasn't super hungry at lunch. And then we had another 3 hours or so to get down to Barranco, which was the next camp that we were gonna set up shop at. And so this time it was all going down too, and going down is just brutal. Like I learned this in my first ultra marathon, but going downhill is way worse than going up because it's just beating your quads up, beating your freaking legs up. And it was also raining on the way down, so we had to be very careful because it was slick, it was technical. We were going down a lot of rocks, so that was honestly a brutal, brutal climb for me on day 3, just because I was not feeling great, had the stomach issues, I couldn't take down a whole lot of fuel, and you're just becoming a calorie burning machine. Like your body is just a furnace. So I was burning all the fuel that I had and not able to replenish as well as I should have. And that was tough, but we made it to Barranco Camp. And as happy as I was to be done the climb for the day, like the views were just unreal. We got to see some epic waterfalls, and just like the vastness of Kilimanjaro is just crazy. We went from like a jungle climate to the desert into like a wetlands type vibe. And, it felt like we were I've never been to Scotland or Ireland, but that's what it felt like. It felt like we were, on the coast, with these amazing rocks and landscapes. And every once in a while the sun would peek out and and the clouds would go away and we would get these epic views, and you could just see for, miles and miles and miles. And it was just unbelievably gorgeous. But by the time we got to Barranco Camp, this was the toughest night. Night 3 into day 4, I was in the bathroom all night. I couldn't get to sleep. I was waking up. I was darting to the bathroom. And, by the way, we paid a little extra and we had these like porta johns, 3 of them, and they were like $15 extra per person or something like that. And I could not tell you how clutch they came in, because the bathrooms on Kilimanjaro are probably the nastiest thing you'll ever see in your entire life. You don't even want to go near them. And if I had to go in them all night long, it would have been a miserable experience. But I ate just some bland foods, as many bland foods as I could. So like just some fruit and mostly bananas, just some plain toast and eggs and sausage, and just nothing too hard, chicken, nothing too hard on the stomach, which was tough because I was really hungry, but I couldn't eat and anything I was eating was coming right out. So I did take a couple of Imodiums throughout the day, which is like, diarrhea medication. I know it's a little TMI, but basically plugs you up so you're not going to the bathroom so you can preserve your energy. And that was just a miserable night. So, not having a ton of fuel, not getting much sleep, left for a tough day on day 4 where we scaled the Barranco wall, which took about 2 hours to get up the wall. And it was just very technical, a lot of like climbing. So, if you've ever been like bouldering, it was a lot of like, full body using your arms, using your legs. So, you're not going real fast at all, but you're using a lot of strength. And, by the time we got to the top of the wall, I was just very depleted. I kept drinking water, but I was just very, very depleted by the end of it. And, we stopped once we got to the top of the Bronco wall. We actually broke our porters, man. They're just incredible. They had snacks set up for us. They had some tea for us. And so we took about, a 20-minute rest from there. And then, it was kind of rolling hills down and up for a couple more hours until we got to Karanga Camp, which was where we were going to camp the night of day 4. But, overall, day 3, day 4, really, really tough for me. Just not able to take in the fuel that I needed. And you're just constantly burning through so many calories. But ultimately was able to get through it. And shout out to the porters for carrying our porta johns because they came in so clutch and they were always so clean at every camp. So, shout out to them. Shout out to them. That is all I can say. Day 5, woke up, finally, stomach was feeling a little bit better, but I didn't want to risk anything. So for the whole rest of the camp, the whole rest of the climb, I was eating very, very, easy to digest foods, like some beef sticks, some, again, fruit, and toast, potatoes, things like that. No hot sauce or anything like that. Day 5, we were going from Karanga Camp up to Barafu, and Barafu is ice camp in Swahili. That's what it means, and that was where we were going to camp the night before we went up to Summit. So day 5 was another pretty good elevation, climb because we went from about 13,000 to about 15,500 where we were going to be at ice camp. So we got to camp around on day 5 around lunchtime, and then we had lunch. And this is where it got weird, because then they were told to go to sleep or take a nap in the afternoon, and it was so hot in the afternoon. It was scorching hot. So I went to sleep. I took a nap and I had my shirt off, and I woke up and I was freezing cold, and it was super windy and rainy. So I had to put on my shirt and jacket back on, because like an hour later it got freezing cold. The weather was just insane. We were going through you could go through 4 different seasons in a day. It was just unreal. And so we took a nap in the afternoon, and then we got woken back up for dinner around 6. And then we had dinner and got our final briefing from our guides on what the next couple of hours were going to look like and what the plan was for going to the summit. And so after dinner, again, they were like, fill up we gave them our waters. We laid out all of our stuff for the climb, made sure we had our batteries and our headlamps, made sure that we had our hiking poles, gloves, hand warmers, all of our cold weather gear, because it was going to be freezing at the top of the mountain and really cold going up it. So first time we were really busting out all of our winter gear. And so we woke up at 11 p.m. and got all our stuff on and went into the tent for some tea or some hot chocolate, coffee, whatever you wanted. And then, some cookies, some bread, and some toasts, just some light things before we were going to take off at midnight, because our goal was to get to the summit by sunrise so we could watch the sunrise from the mountain. As had been the case throughout the duration of the climb, our group was running a bit behind. So we didn't end up taking off till like 12:30. And, we had a big group. We had 11 of us and we were all in this together. Like by this point, we were all super close. Everybody had had their tough day. Mine was day 3 and day 4. But, other people's were other days. It just depended. Some people got headaches, altitude sickness, stomach aches like me. Um, people were dealing with a lot of adversity, but everybody else was there to just help them. So overall, it was amazing to see how close our group was able to become over the course of, a 5, 6 day period. And, it was like we're all getting to the top of the mountain because as you get up, we're going to almost 20,000 feet of elevation, like 19.3, 19.4. So you're getting up there and it's dark, it's cold, it's windy, and you can't see anything. You look up the mountain and you can't see anything besides a trail of lights. Everybody's headlamps that are going on, and you look up and you see people so far away, and then it's just like, kind of like, man, we still have a long way to go. But honestly, I think it was better that we did it at night because if you did it during the day, you just constantly keep looking up and you keep seeing how far you have to go, and it would just be demoralizing. So, at least in the dark, like you see the lights, but you can't really tell how far they are. So you never really know how far you have to go. Um, but, going up the mountain, I was really worried about my hands freezing, but I never put on my big winter gloves that I spent a lot of money on. I kept my liner gloves on and I just kept them in my pockets and was using hand warmers because I knew that if most other people were using their hiking poles, and I knew that if I was using my hiking poles, my hands were going to be out and exposed and they were going to be locked in that like grip position and they were going to freeze. And that's what happened to a lot of people. And we get to one stop and my mom is like, her hands were just frozen. And I went into like mom mode. I started like rubbing her hands, trying to warm them up. I took my hand warmers, I grabbed my friend Ryan who was with us, I grabbed his hand warmers, I gave them to her. We warmed her hands up and I was like, mom, no matter what, like we're getting you to the top of this mountain and we're getting you back down, because she was getting real bad altitude sickness at this point, but she kept chugging and she never needed oxygen, because if you need oxygen, because they carry an oxygen tank with them, the guides, but if you need it, then they take you down immediately. So we weren't going to let that happen. Obviously, if anybody really was in desperate need of it, they were going to give it to them, but everybody was going to make it. So after like 6.5 hours of climbing, the sun started to finally come up. And Kilimanjaro has actually 3 peaks. Uhuru Peak is the one that we were going to get to. That's the highest peak. And then there are 2 other ones, Shira, and I can't remember the other one, the third one. But the third one was where the sun rose over as we were getting up towards the summit. We didn't make it to the very summit in time for the sunrise, but we still got to have an unbelievable sunrise experience. And if you've ever seen The Lion King and there's like the La Brisa Buena, whatever they do there, I had been waiting my entire life to say that over for a sunrise in Africa, and it was one of the best moments of my life, and it was the most breathtaking experiences of my entire life. And again, I just felt so close to God there, and just felt so much. I just felt this overwhelming sense of gratitude getting to the top, or not even at the top, but just like taking a second to realize that 6 months ago I was almost dead, and then now I was climbing the tallest peak in Africa, the world's tallest freestanding mountain, with my mom, with 10 other incredible human beings, and we were raising money for a great cause. And the only word I could just use to describe that is just like alive. I had never felt more alive in my whole life. But we still weren't there, so we had to keep going. At this point, I was almost out of food. I had brought some snacks, but at that point, you're 7 hours into a climb. you're just becoming a calorie burning machine. Um, so obviously everybody's getting tired, everybody's getting weak, everybody's getting a little bit of headaches from being up at that altitude. Never been at that altitude, but we made it to the top, or what we thought was the top. So you get to the top, and they call it. There's like a big sign that says, "Congratulations, you've made it to Stella Point." And we were all like celebrating, like so happy. People start crying, and then we're taking pictures in front of it. And then we realize that it's not the peak. It's not the highest point. You still have another 5K, about another hour of climbing, of walking to get to the actual highest point, to Uhuru Peak. So it was a little demoralizing for pretty much all of us. And there were a couple of people in our group who were like, I'm done, I'm not going. And so Julius, who was our guide, he was like, okay, like, you guys who want to keep going, a couple of the guides, like, they'll take you, you keep going. And so we took off, and then we start walking. And then, we get to a point about halfway, and we look back and we see the rest of our group. Not the rest of our group, but a couple of other people of our group. Like my mom, who wasn't going to come, she came. Two other people. So like three or four of them who weren't going to go, but ended up, deciding that they were going to make it. And so we walked very slowly together, and it's super cold at that point. It's snow capped, and it's just a trudge. It's just a trudge to get there. But after about an hour, we look up and we see the sign. We see the Tanzanian flag, and it's just one of the most gratifying feelings I've ever felt in my entire life. And just being there, being at the top, it was a quick experience, because you can't be there for that long because of the altitude. So I'm standing on the mountain, and I just look around and I see everybody celebrating. Again, being able to do this experience with my mom was something that just, again, makes me emotional to even think about. And just seeing, all that she's overcome in her health journey, and that she was able to summit Mount Kilimanjaro at age 50 is super inspiring to me. And, so we started taking pictures. Our one guide or one of our porters who came all the way up to the top with us, he starts pouring us ginger tea. We started having tea, and then we look back, and then the couple people who weren't going to come to the top of the mountain, we see them trudging up the back, and we're like, oh my gosh. So we freak out. All 11 of us made it to the very peak. All 11 of us. And it was a team effort. None of us were going to do it without one another. So that was a very special moment. So we took the group pic and kind of just took in the beauty of being at that point. And then we started our trudge down. And, at this point, a couple of people were getting altitude sickness. So they had to get them down as fast as they could. So they grabbed my mom, they grabbed a couple of other people who were not doing too well, and they hustled them down the mountain. And granted, it is like slick. You're going down on sand. It's really, really hot at this point. As soon as you get off the top of the mountain, you're just baking in the sun. And it's like a 3-hour climb down. So all in all, it was like 11 and a half hours from the base camp to the top and back down. And I just wanted to get off that mountain so freaking quick. I had no more water left. I had no more food. I was basically like sprinting down the mountain until I finally caught up with my mom, who was being rushed down there. And, I was able to help her get back to camp and, get some mango juice in her, get her rehydrated, get a little bit of food in her and get a little rest in. Because at this point, too, once everybody made it down the mountain, again, it was almost 12 hours going top to bottom that day. We still had to get off, we still had to go down to the next camp. So it was a slow trudge going again downhill, which was just brutal to the next camp. So when it was all said and done, it was like almost 14 hours of climbing for that day, and everybody was just exhausted by the time we got to dinner, and we all had sun poisoning on our lips because you don't realize how strong the sun is when you're coming down the mountain. And so we all just got absolutely, our lips just got absolutely destroyed. That was probably the worst part about it. But we had some time to decompress and just get some good sleep that night. It was like the first night on the mountain where I actually slept through the night because I was just so tired. And then we woke up the next day and we had 13 kilometers to cover of downhill. So, probably another good like 5, 6 hours of hiking going down to reach the bottom. And we were again going through we went through like three different climates that day. We started in like the desert, and then we got into like some grasslands, and then finally back down through the rainforest again. And, as amazing as that experience was, and I was trying to be present and soak up all of it, I wanted to get the hell off of that mountain so bad, as did everyone else. Um, and it downpoured for the last like hour and a half of the climb, but it was an amazing, amazing experience to we were all in better spirits this day than we were the day before, coming down the mountain. So we finally made it down, and what was hilarious was there's no like prices in Tanzania. People just like do things and expect you to pay them. So we get to the bottom of the mountain, people immediately start like cleaning our shoes, and then they expect you to give them money. And we're like, what the heck is going on? So just funny about Tanzania. I love the people, but like they're just like, oh yeah, they'll just do stuff for you, and then they expect you to pay for it. And there's no price on anything, so they'll try to get a lot. They'll try to get more out of you than obviously they would from somebody else. But that was just a funny story. But we finally get down, and we take a picture in front of the sign, and by this time we're starving again. So we loaded up on the bus. We went and we had an incredible meal, and I hadn't been able to eat much the past couple of days, and so I probably I ate like 3 full plates. I just felt like a bottomless pit. I could not stop. Um, One thing I forgot to mention on this day was before we began our descent, again, like we got some songs busted out from the porters and the guides, and we all got to express our gratitude for just the trip and the work that they had done, and the connections that they had made, and the trust that they had built with us. And it was very emotional. I documented this whole process, so I'm going to be coming out with some YouTube content, some long form YouTube content here in the future. But so you guys will get to kind of experience that whole thing as well. But getting to the bottom of the mountain, sharing that one last meal with everybody, it really just, like, I couldn't help but just be overwhelmed with a sense of gratitude, and realizing that that is the point of life, is to, you know, constantly get outside of your comfort zone, and, help others, serve others to accomplish a mission. And just what I learned through conversations with new friends and companions, and the people that I spent so much time with, was that you have an opportunity to make an impact on someone each and every day, in each and every moment. And like, life is about getting outside of our comfort zone. It's about traveling. It's about experiencing different cultures and talking to different people, and um, you know, learning through these experiences and passing that on to others so that they can also do that, and just amplify the whole human experience. So it was just the 2 hours we spent on the bus back to the hostel that we were staying at. I was so tired, but so just overwhelmed with a sense of gratitude and love, and also couldn't wait to take a shower and put some chapstick on my lips. But um, just realizing that I had that I had climbed Kilimanjaro 6 months after almost dying. I just kept like repeating to myself. It was, and obviously you give yourself a little pat on the back there. But what I hope for you guys all to take away from this is that nothing is impossible with God, because without Him, like, I'm nothing. I wouldn't been able to come back and do this, and you know I felt like this experience brought me so much closer to Him. But whatever you believe in, whatever your views are, putting yourself into these uncomfortable environments and investing in yourself in these experiences is way more. It's going to give you so much more than buying that expensive pair of shoes or that car, or going clubbing every weekend is going to give you. And I've got so much love for Tanzania, for the people there, for the beautiful landscape, for the amazing people that I was able to participate in this climb with. And I'm stoked to say that we're going to be back in 2025. Climb for the Kids 2025 is going to happen. So if you are interested, if this is something that is on your heart and you feel called to do, we are announcing the dates very, very soon. And there's more time here. So it's a little bit of an expensive trip, but so there's also opportunities to get sponsors to help cover the costs. And also you're going to get so much more out of it than you could even imagine. So if you're interested in that, check out the link in the show notes for info on Climb for the Kids 2025. And let this be a reminder to continue to seek discomfort, get out of your comfort zone, and strive to continue to learn through experience so that you can pass it on to others and make this world a better place. Thank you guys for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed. Keep pursuing, keep seeking, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace. Thank you guys so much for tuning into today's episode. I wanted to give you all a heads up too that I launched a free community on the Upspace app where you can join, ask me questions, connect with like-minded individuals, follow my 4-week running and strength training program that has some dedicated mobility sessions in there as well, so that we can all optimize our health and fitness together. So if you're interested, head over to the App Store, download the Upspace app, and join the Pure Ambition community today. Love you guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.